Every Sunday for the past month and a half or however long we haven't met, I have had to have a camera videoing our time, and I've had to look at myself as I talk. I know how you feel. I apologize. I can't do a thing about it. Grab your Bibles, and we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 10 again. And one of the things that I think this time at least has afforded us, and I think, maybe you don't think quite like I do, but it's a time of when things get different, or you get bumped out of a routine, or something is kind of shaken a little bit. You're afforded maybe a little bit to think outside of your paradigm that you're usually operating in. Your routine is broken a little bit. Even if work hasn't changed for you, it's different when you go into the grocery store and there's no toilet paper. So, I mean, those kind of things cause you to think. And so I just want to use these verses this morning to help us think a little bit, think a little different. Maybe hit the reset button on where you are in your faith, or think, why do we do this? Why do we even set aside time? What is preaching and teaching? Why do we sing? All these things. We're not going to answer all those today, but certainly to begin to look at the what we'll call the irreplaceable today. And so as we look at Hebrews 10, as you study with me, chapter 1 and 2 of Hebrews is Christ is the greater law. He's the greater angel. He's greater than all the angels put together. Of chapters 3 and 4, Christ is the greater Moses. Christ is the greater promised land. 5 through 7 is Christ is better than all the priests, even that weird guy in Genesis we call Melchizedek. Christ is the 8 through 10, where we're going to park at the end today. Christ is the better sacrifice, the final sacrifice. He's the better covenant, the better promise. And if we are humble enough, and if we understand the greater than before in Hebrews, and we're genuinely humble and know ourselves, we might expect verses 24 and 25 to come. We might just expect that. We might, in our humility, say, I think that something about getting together, something about gathering might come. Because at the end of every one of those greater than are significant and heavy warnings. The Bible is full of promise and warning, promise and warning, promise and warning. And we're not going to have time to we're not going to unpack any of these warnings on exactly who they're directed to or what they mean, but they ought to cause us to pause. And so if we say, okay, Jesus is the greater than, the Bible is not just a bunch of rules or cool stories, but Jesus is the greater than, and there's significant warnings that we read, and they're in God's Word, we might in our humility say, aha, verse 24 and 25 of chapter 10 have got to come. They've got to come. And so we're going to look at the irreplaceable, the look of the irreplaceable, and then the value of the irreplaceable today. So the irreplaceable, the look, and then the value of it. Let me read these verses that many of us know well. Verse 24, chapter 10. And let us consider how to stir one another to love and good deeds, or good works, not neglecting to meet together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And so, I want to just look at this. It's irreplaceable. What we are doing, however imperfect it is, however just sometimes bumpy it is, and it's just irreplaceable. As I get older, I've noticed, I think a little bit more, just a little bit, and as I get older, I begin to know the stories that I'm drawn to, the stories that I love to retell, the books or the movies that I want to just look at again and read again, have something to do with community and have something to do with the change that happens. We just recently, as a family, watched a bounce back and forth from Rocky to Driving Miss Daisy, right? And so we, as a family, watched Driving Miss Daisy. And it really does, as we think about the irreplaceable nature of the church and of the gathering. It's just an odd, because you have this cranky, old white woman. Okay, I'm not going to say who that is in this congregation, but this cranky old white woman, Jewish white woman, butts heads up against this Morgan Freeman's character, who is he's an older guy too, an older black Christian man. And then there's this scene at the end that if you don't shed one tear, you must be dead inside. There's this scene where this cranky old woman looks at Morgan Freeman as they're getting older and losing their faculties, and she looks at him and says, "Hoke, you're my best friend." And it took him a while to get there. But this picture, this irreplaceable gathering, everything that you are connected to, everything we pour our time into is replaceable. This isn't. It is irreplaceable. And I think it's irreplaceable for a couple reasons. But I want us to just, is it? Do you believe that? Do your children know that? Number one, the reason why it's irreplaceable is because of the uniqueness of it. There's nothing in the world like it. There's absolutely nothing in the world like what we do. In all of the individuality that we have in our culture, and we often hear things like, "Well, you're irreplaceable," right? There's no one like you. You're irreplaceable. Sometimes that's an insult, so just be heads up for that. But you're irreplaceable. We often don't think of irreplaceability with the idea of a community. Because community or gatherings often in our culture are for entertainment or activities, and when we grow out of that activity or out of that entertainment, we just move on to the next one because there's always the next one. What we do here is eternal. It is forever. It is for everybody. It is for young. It's for old. It's for every race. It's just irreplaceable what we do. And we're called to love one another. It's absolutely irreplaceable. The other thing is you need it. So it's irreplaceable for at least two reasons. Number one, there's just nothing else like it, and two, you need it. Verse 26 is, I think, the final warning in Hebrews. And it's butting right up against this irreplaceable community. If you go on sinning. That warning. As if to say, you will go on sinning. You will gravitate into your own individual sin, your own self-righteousness, your own self-pity if you don't have this group. You need it. In fact, it's not just a nice little thing to tag onto your life. It is essential, and it's dangerous not to have it. That's why it's irreplaceable. It's just a dangerous thing not to have it. And here's I hope your kids believe this. I hope your kids see this in your life. I hope that you repent when it's not modeled in your house. And look, it's not always easy gathering. We're going to talk about what gathering means in just a minute. But that you would say, look, man, Daddy blew it this morning. I took the replaceable for the irreplaceable. There are a ton of things you could be doing. And some of them are probably more exciting than doing what you're doing right now. The issue is this is irreplaceable. I pray that you believe that. I pray that during this routine shake-up a little bit, we can kind of pause and look. Is it really? Are we sure? Because here's what's going to happen. We're a church with a lot of kids. And here's what's going to happen with your kids in sports and activities. Probably those are going to try to play catch-up too. And so how are you going? Is it irreplaceable? Is this irreplaceable, or is your kid's schedule with whatever they're doing right now? And I have, it's been hard for me as a pastor with that, right? During basketball season, every Wednesday, we missed a good amount of practice time. They would have to practice without me. And they probably got better. But that isn't truly irreplaceable. Now, it says here in the text that some are in the habit of doing this. That should make you sad. It's not, oh, shucks, that's too bad, because church would help you be a moral person. Watch Andy Griffith, that'll help you be moral. This is irreplaceable. It's not, oh, shucks, if you know the warnings that are coming. Your family is in danger. Your kids are in danger if you take the irreplaceable and move them out of it. So we don't neglect. So here's one thing that I've kicked around, and because I know we're busy. I know there's a ton of stuff on the table for us. And look, they're good. I mean, it's not like y'all are robbing liquor stores. I mean, these are good things that you're doing. These are fun things. These are good things for your kids to be involved in. And so then I bat around in my head, okay, how much time should we expect for you and for me to gather? How much time a week should it be? 2 hours? Should it be 2.5? Should it be 3 hours? Should it be 4 hours? And as I come to this verse, I think I'm thinking outside the box a little bit. If you were to bump into one of these church members in this church, and you were to say, how many hours is enough for you? I don't think they have a clue what you're talking about. I think it's I think I've been thinking of it because I don't want to overtax you. I certainly don't want to present a legalistic approach to gathering together. Every time the church doors are open, if you're not here, God, you don't love Jesus. That's not what we're after. But at the same time, I don't think they would even understood what you mean. I think they would have said, don't you understand Jesus is the greater than? And don't you understand the warnings? I don't count time. And that doesn't mean that I have permission to speak for 2 hours today either. But some of you just freaked out when I said that. I won't, I promise. But it's that I don't think they have a cap limit on church time and gathering time and prayer time and Bible study time and meeting together time. Now, so with that said, let me push a little bit further. Okay, so if this is your church, let me push a little bit further. Ways that we could challenge our hearts right now as things just look different and weird and odd and all those things. Where are you with church membership? Where are you with commitment to the church? If you are a member, I'm still asking you that question. Like, are you following through with what you promised the church that you would do? Where are you with standing up and saying, this is a public proclamation, I want you to know I'm in? Where are you with that? And so that's part of the gathering, the commitment part of the gathering that I think Hebrews is showing us. And then number 2, what about Sunday morning? Are you in gathering on Sunday morning? Now, this is not coronavirus. If you choose not to be here, shame on you. That's not what this is. I'm saying going forward, this allows us to think, what are we doing with Sunday morning? What are we doing? What about here? And are we balancing time well? Meaning this, what you're doing right now is passive learning. You're passive. I'm speaking, it's passive. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just passive. You need to also put yourself in a place where there is active learning. And that's where Sunday school and home groups come in. So let me ask you about Sunday school. Why not? Why not? Jesus is the great. This isn't a guilt trip. I'm asking you to think through these things. We have this opportunity. Why are we not committed to that? Maybe there's a good reason. I don't know. Jesus is the greater than, and are the warnings serious? Why not? And then so Sunday school would be a more active Bible study as opposed to what you're doing now. What about home groups? That's again, it's smaller and it's an active learning place. Are these irreplaceable to your family? If you're not in a home group, I think it's fair to just say, well, why not? I'll tell you, it's not going to be easy to get into one, right? Because we don't have one every minute of every single. It's going to cost sacrifice. I know that. But why not? Why are we not in one? Why are we, and if we are in one, are we taking it seriously? This is just as I step back and say, if I take Hebrew seriously, was the original intent go to home groups? No, but it's the gathering that we want to take serious. And then, so let me challenge you this way. As you look at that and say, are these irreplaceable? And is it communicated to my family? And I know it's easier for me to be here than you, probably, right? Because I get to wear a microphone. But what about, would you even be willing to do once a week, you will then meet one-on-one with somebody and just have a cup of coffee and talk about how things are going? Irreplaceable. Would you do that? Would you do that? Would you begin to look at church a little different? If you look at this picture, you will notice nothing spectacular. There's no famous people there. They're not even that handsome. And I have no idea where I would be without these guys. And what these guys continually show me through 20 plus years of friendship is the importance of not neglecting meeting together. Meeting together sometimes looks like that. I don't know where I would be without these guys. Do you have a picture that you could show to say, here's who showed me, here's who was with me, here's who showed me the value of not neglecting meeting together? Let's keep going. The look of the irreplaceable. Of course, if it's irreplaceable, it's got a certain shine to it. It's got a certain attraction to it. What is it? I'm going to go through these quickly. I try to do an acronym at least once a decade, so here it is. I'm not sharp enough to do it more than that. The first one is thank you. Let us consider one another, and so that is a thanking word that you and I are to be a thanking church, a considering church. We are to be thoughtful people. We are to fill our mind and our affections with people. You can't do that very well if you are neglecting what we just talked about. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And the more that we are understanding irreplaceable, the deeper thinking about one another gets. Your emotions. You understand people. Have you ever gotten we might use this word consider. Have you ever gotten a bad gift? Where you could tell that somebody thought, oh no, their birthday, and they run to the dollar store and just like grab the first thing that's on the shelf, and you open it up and you think, what in the blazes is this? I don't even know what this is. Everybody got that? Right? Not for me, because I don't buy y'all presents. But, right? And you think, what? This isn't, what would you say? This isn't considerate. Right? You want to be considerate, get me Duke basketball tickets. That would be considerate. You ever got one of those gifts? Sure you have. And that's what this word is mean. That so you know them well enough. You understand where they are. You know where they are as a mom, as a dad, as a woman, as a man. And you're able to think about that. Get your church directory out and look through it. Number 2, irritate. This ought to be on our church t-shirt. We don't have church t-shirts, but if we ever did, I don't think we should get them. But if we ever get them, they should say, Union Chapel Church, we irritate each other. And so, that's you know that word spur, if you've done any kind of Bible study on that word means irritate. That we are to irritate one another. You are to put yourself in a position, your family in a position, where you allow me to irritate you. Has it ever happened? You need to put yourself in a position where others can irritate you. Let me just say, here's what this word means. Here's what this word points to. It points to confrontation. It points to one-on-one. Hey, this isn't like it should be. Irritation. This is a confrontation face-to-face kind of thing, sitting down with their group and saying, I'm really curious about this relationship you're in. I'm not comfortable with it. Can you help me understand it? Now, we don't do it in a way that exasperates the person or discourages the person. We do it out of love. But we are to irritate out of love, not to discourage. And I think one of the best ways to do that is certainly asking questions. We are not a bunch of mosquitoes. We are not supposed to irritate one another like mosquitoes and suck each other's blood. We are to irritate each other as we look, and this isn't going to happen. In fact, if you irritate one another without being committed to one another within the local church, neglecting meeting together, all you will do is exasperate each other. But if irritation is done within the context of being committed, I think it just looks different. Number 3, encouragement. We ought to be encouraging one another. It's hard to encourage one another if you're neglecting meeting. If you put a cap on it, got 2 hours, and then that's all I can do this week. We are to be encouragement to one another. We are to drive each other closer to the gospel, not into despair. Further away from yourself and closer to who He is for the joy of our church, for the church body. We are to be an encouragement. We are to, so let me just say the obvious. I've said this before, but runners are weird. They are from a different planet. But one of my favorite things to do is to go to races. I don't go to many, but I love to go to my wife's races. Because one, it helps me understand that she is weird, but two, it helps me understand what encouragement looks like. You will have a bunch of people who don't even know the people running. I watched a video on a guy who doesn't run the Boston Marathon, and he gets up in the morning and it shows his preparation so he can go and encourage the people running the Boston Marathon. That is weird. That is just weird. He has a megaphone, and runners are weird. And I have to confess, there are times, I can remember one in particular race in Columbus that Mindy ran, where I'm on a hill watching, and here comes this old guy. I mean, just barely making it, right? It's a 5K, and this guy, I think, was around with dinosaurs. And he is running, kind of, and he just looks like he's going to fall over. And there's this whole hillside of people, I'm pretty sure didn't know him, and they are cheering at the top of their lungs. And I started crying like, that's the picture of Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. A bunch of weird people encouraging other weird people who barely know how to run. That's the encouragement. Now, let me just say this and we'll move on. Here's where churches, and we have to be careful, we can fall off on one side or the other side. We can't fall into the ditch. We either are an irritating church or we're an encouraging church. We can't be both. This tells us we have to be both to be irreplaceable. Right? Some churches are more run like a dictatorship, and they're just like, you're not falling in line. And some are just like, oh, it's okay, no big deal. Just be the authentic you. No. Bring them both together. We need to be irritating and encouraging. That's irreplaceable. And then finally, do something. It says we're to consider how we can spur or irritate one another to love and good deeds. So as we look at what irreplaceable is, we are in a community that's irreplaceable because this is not about us. You guys do not sit around and say, how can we make this service exactly what Jeremy wants? The exact kind of music, the exact kind of setup. Does he want pews or chairs? Does he want red carpet or blue? You don't do that. Why? Because we are all with the mindset of serving one another with depth. We are to do something. So now is a time when routine is shaken to say the community is irreplaceable. Here's what the community looks like that's irreplaceable. Now do something, which means, if I could question this, what is your ministry? What is your ministry here? And I believe because the church is the irreplaceable community, that your ministry in some way has to or needs to, if this is your home church, flows out of Union Chapel. It's not that your own little ministry here and every once in a while you check in. That's not how it works. I don't think that's biblical. It flows through Union Chapel. And so your ministry, what is it? Inside, outside, what is it? What is how God has gifted you? Do something. Don't be a consumer. Do something. Be committed. There are so many gatherings and groups where you and I are allowed to be consumers. This isn't one of them. So what is your ministry? So some of you, honestly, you don't have one. There's nothing here that you can say, this is where I serve. I'm committed. People can count on me. I'm willing to lay down my time and my desires so that I serve you. So let me just ask you, what might that be? What are your gifts? And then can I ask you, how are you being equipped? How can I help you as a pastor be better equipped to serve your church and your community? How can I do that? Would you be willing to talk with me? Come into one of our elders meeting and say, I don't know what I'm good at. And it took me, how old? I'm 42 years old. I still don't know what I'm good at. So if you were just to sit down and say, would you pray? Because I want to be active. I don't want to be a consumer. I don't want to be a rear in the chair. So do so. So that is what the irreplaceable community looks like. And if we're honest, probably everyone in this room, because of where we live, has ingrained into their worldview and how they see the world a consumer mentality. Right? I ordered something off of Amazon Prime, 2-day shipping, it gets here in 3 days, and I'm ticked. I'm ticked off. Because I needed it. I won't tell you what it was, but I needed it. That is the mindset that we often bring into church. Is there any way that I can equip you to further your ministry within the church and outside the church? Village Missions offers a free Bible college certificate if you're willing to commit. You want to do that? You want to go through that? We're willing to do that. So let's finally, let's look at the value of the irreplaceable. And let's clear something up right away, right? The value of the irreplaceable, what we do here, take a deep breath, has nothing to do with you. That's such good news. It's not how awesome you are or how things work or if the microphones are echoey or I tell stupid jokes. It has every single thing to do with how awesome He is. That's what makes it irreplaceable. That's the only thing that makes it. You take Christ and the knowledge of Christ out of what we do, the depth of it, the scriptures, and then what we do has become replaceable. And I think that's what's happening around a lot of our friends' churches. The Bible is not being taught. It's being read and then go out and do your best. And people are saying, what? I got better things to do than here. We want to understand that in Christ it is irreplaceable. Period. And how does it get irreplaceable? Well, verses 19 and through 22 tell us, help us understand that we're to draw near with a true heart, full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled and cleansed from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast to the confession of hope without wavering, for He who promises faithful. That's why it's irreplaceable. Then comes, and now let us be thinkers, and now let us irritate one another, and now let us encourage one another, and now let's be doers. Because Jesus Christ is the ultimate thinker. He's the one who thought, okay, they're lost in sin, they're lost in selfishness, they're doomed to hell. I will go after them. Jesus Christ entered into our space that we might enter as a community into His space, that we might come. And can you think of anyone more irritating than Jesus Christ? We typically have cute little pictures of white Jesus with hair blowing through his, or wind blowing through his hair. Jesus was irritating. And if I could just take one example, we could talk about the woman at the well. Hey, Jesus, says the woman at the well, how should we worship? And if I could just bring that a little bit into our context, should we use hymns or should we use praise songs, or should we use guitars, or should we use... And Jesus said, I actually want to talk about your sin. And she says, no, but is it okay to have keyboards or piano? Well, I actually want to talk about your sin. Jesus does that over and over and over again in the Gospels. Doesn't He? We see that in the Old Testament. Anyone more irritating than Jesus? He is irritating. And yet at the same time, is there anyone more encouraging than Jesus? more patient than Jesus with your stubborn heart? Anyone that stands on the hill and by the power of the Spirit begins to cheer you on. Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep going. I'm the greater. And is there anyone who has done more in doing than Jesus? Love and good deeds. And Jesus Christ's love and good deeds actually points to one deed where He bore our sins. His love, His deed frees us up as a church to go with confidence, to hold fast. And that's all done within the context of community. To understand the cross is to understand community. To understand the resurrection is to understand the community. To understand forgiveness of sins is to understand community. That is how it's laid out. Why? Because He's the greater than. Why? Because the warnings are real. The greatest story ever told is true. And it's meant to be told over and over and over again in community. Lord, thank You for loving us so much that You have given us the irreplaceable in what the church is and what we are to become. Lord, I pray that we would understand that we are irreplaceable because we look at the past and we look at the future. As the day approaches, we hold tighter and tighter to the irreplaceable. As distractions get greater and greater, Lord, I pray that we would believe that the Church of Jesus Christ is irreplaceable because You are. Thank You for putting us in such an odd, interesting, weird place with a bunch of sinners who are forgiven and their hearts are being transformed into the image of Christ for Your glory and our joy. Amen.